They gathered under gray skies and falling leaves, friends, family, and a few quiet strangers, to say goodbye to Henry Walker, the reclusive man who lived deep in the forest and once saved a bear from certain death. But as the pastor began to speak, a hush swept over the crowd. From the edge of the woods, a massive brown bear emerged, slow, deliberate, and completely unafraid. Gasps echoed. Phones were lowered. Children were pulled close. The bear walked to the coffin, sat on its haunches, and stayed. Not growling. Not moving. Grieving. It didn't matter that it was wild. It didn't matter that it wasn't human. It was mourning the only person who had ever shown it kindness. And what the bear did next, after the final prayer, would leave every witness in stunned silence. And the entire town changed forever. Henry Walker was the kind of man people didn't understand, but they respected him just the same. He lived in a wooden cabin 3 miles past the last paved road, at the edge of Pine Hollow Forest, surrounded by trees, snow, and silence. Most folks only saw him once a month when he'd come into town for supplies. Always alone. Always quiet. A gentle nod, a kind word, and then gone again. But there was one story everyone in town knew. The legend. Years ago, some say 15 winters back, Henry found a bear cub caught in a poacher's steel trap. Instead of turning back, he pried it open with his bare hands. The cub's leg was mangled. Everyone assumed it wouldn't make it. Henry carried it home, wrapped it in blankets, fed it with a bottle, and tended its wounds through the darkest winter. Against all odds, the cub survived. Then one morning in spring, it was gone. He never spoke much about it. Only once did he say, "That bear knew I helped it. I saw it in its eyes." Life carried on. Henry grew older. His hair grayed. His trips to town became fewer. And then one autumn day, the news spread. Henry Walker had died in his sleep. No family. No next of kin. Just a note on his table that read, "The woods raised me. If anyone cares, bury me where they watched over me." And so the town did. They gathered in a clearing not far from his cabin, neighbors, a few old friends, and even the mayor. A simple pine casket. A folding chair for the preacher. Orange leaves drifting down like confetti from the sky. But no one expected who would come walking out of the trees. The wind fell still as the bear emerged from the tree line. At first, people thought it was a dog. Then came the gasps. A full-grown grizzly towering, with fur the color of wet soil and eyes that seemed far too intelligent for a wild animal. It walked slowly, no aggression, no fear, toward the group of mourners standing frozen by Henry's coffin. "Everyone stay calm," whispered Sheriff Madsen, one hand reaching instinctively for his sidearm. But the bear didn't charge. Didn't snarl. It stopped a few feet from the casket. Then sat down. Some guests backed away. Others stood frozen in awe. No one dared move. The bear bowed its head. Time stood still. Minutes passed. The pastor, voice shaking, resumed the service. As he read Henry's favorite passage from an old worn Bible, the bear remained still, watching, listening, as though it understood every word. Then, just before the closing prayer, the bear did something no one could explain. It rose, stepped forward, and pressed its massive head gently against the side of the wooden coffin. A goodbye. A thank you. And then it sat again. Not leaving. Not yet. No one spoke. No one could. Even the birds seemed to pause as the bear remained by the coffin, head bowed slightly, its breath rising in slow, visible clouds. It wasn't just present. It was mourning. Grieving. Old Martha Daniels, who'd lived in Pine Hollow for 82 years, whispered through tears, "That's the one. That's Henry's bear." Some people wept. Others watched in stunned disbelief. The mayor pulled out his phone but couldn't bring himself to raise it. It didn't feel right. Because this wasn't a spectacle. It was sacred. After the final words were spoken and the coffin lowered into the earth, people began to drift away, slowly, reverently, casting backward glances at the animal who stayed behind. Only Sheriff Madsen and a few others remained, unsure what to do. The bear still hadn't moved. So they left it alone. By dusk, when the last light vanished from the sky, the bear was still there, lying beside the fresh grave. The next morning, when the groundskeeper returned, the bear was gone. But beside the grave, something had been left. A large, smooth river stone, balanced carefully on top of the wooden cross marker. And etched into the dirt, next to it, were claw marks. Not random digging. Not scavenging. Lines. 4 deep lines. A mark. A memory. A farewell. News of the funeral spread quickly. Photos of the bear sitting beside the coffin, taken discreetly by one brave mourner, went viral within hours. Headlines read, "Grizzly attends man's funeral. Locals say the two shared a bond. Did this bear come to say goodbye?" Heartbreaking loyalty in the wild. But for the people of Pine Hollow, it wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about Henry, and what he had meant to them and apparently to the forest itself. Some dismissed the bear's actions as coincidence, but not those who knew the story. Not those who'd heard Henry speak gently about a cub with wounded eyes who learned to forgive the world. In the weeks that followed, strange things continued. Hunters reported seeing the bear near Henry's cabin, but never aggressively. Always distant, always still. A wildlife photographer set up a trail cam and captured a now-famous shot, the bear sitting in front of Henry's old porch, staring at the door, like it was waiting. And once, someone left flowers on Henry's grave, only to return the next morning to find a paw print pressed carefully into the dirt beside them. Back at the cabin, neighbors began caring for the property. Clearing branches, sealing leaks, cleaning up tools. They said it felt wrong to let it rot. Henry had given the forest love, and the forest had returned it. Winter came quickly that year. The cabin stood quiet under a thick blanket of snow, its chimney long cold, the forest frozen and still. But now and then, footprints, large, unmistakable, circled the house. Never breaking in. Never disturbing anything. Just visiting. Watching. Remembering. One morning, the local ranger, Ellie Thomas, left a food basket outside Henry's cabin, unsure if the bear would ever come back. The next day, the basket was gone. In its place, a polished stick laid neatly on the porch, stripped of bark. Like a gift. A gesture. Years later, people still speak of that bear. Children call it Henry's guardian. Elders say it still watches over the woods. And every October, on the anniversary of Henry's funeral, someone always finds a new stone placed quietly on his grave. Always smooth. Always centered. As if by a hand that doesn't forget. Epilogue. Some bonds defy species. Love doesn't always come with words. Loyalty doesn't always wear a uniform. And gratitude doesn't care whether you walk on 2 legs or 4. Because sometimes, a man saves a bear. And years later, that bear returns. Not for food, not for shelter, but for him. To mourn. To remember. And to say goodbye. In its own beautiful wild way.